Let's say you're the data scientist for Uber Eats. How would you think about creating a model for predicting how many customers would order food during tomorrow's dinner rush? And I can also rephrase the question if anybody wants me to. Using and I would highly recommend you leverage that framework, because then it'll be easier for us to go through this together. All right, I want to make sure that we all contribute on this together. So who wants to start? Like, how would you, let's say I'm the interviewer and I give you this question, what's the first thing that comes to mind? I'm going to take some notes so we can also talk about this together.
Maybe what day it is and whether it's a festival or a weekend.
Okay.
First. And then which city it is, state, or maybe the country, what kind of population stays there? Is it the working population, or if what is the maximum age group, main age group of the population there? And then maybe the history about past orders, restaurant information, if Uber is giving any offers or discounts tomorrow.
Nice. So, okay. But so let's say I asked you this, right? Would you, using the framework that I described above, right? Would you immediately start with all of these features?
No.
No. Okay. What would you, for the record, these are absolutely features that are used in a training data set. So I'm not just these are great features. But yeah, what would you start with?
I will frame my answer the first task, it is a demand forecasting for the Uber Eats. So first I will try to gather the historic data, what previous trends I have, what are the data I have. I will try analyzing that data.
Okay.
And check for the integrity of the data, whether it's okay or not.
Okay, great.
And then we can think about which model do we have to use, whether it's linear regression.
So pretend that this is in an interview setting, right? So if you're telling me a linear regression, why, I would naturally tell you why do you want to use a linear regression?
Because we are predicting and it's a numerical value. That's why we are going for a linear regression.
Excellent.
And then if we are using a linear regression, then we will just find out what are the predictors, whether or what are our independent variables in the model. We'll try targeting independent variables.
Okay.
And
we can also check what model they are currently using for the prediction.
Excellent. All right, what else? What else are we missing here? Okay, well, I'm kind of giving it away because I'm ordering it in the way that you would answer it. But what's the biggest thing that's missing? All of this is right. Honestly, all of this is right. But you've told me all of this. I still don't really know what this model does. I don't really know what it's predicting. I don't really know who is it for, who is it going to use it. So yes, you guys are good on the 3 and the 4, but I still don't really know anything about the current state. Why are they even asking us to create a model? So let's really start from the start. How would you guys, what are some assumptions or questions that you would ask?
We have to basically customize according to the customer profile.
So what is the user profile?
It could be the family heads that we are targeting, who would be ordering for their families, or the college students, or the working professionals. So we would be targeting because we have to define the pricing range also accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can say for whom we are building this model. Is it for the management or it is for someone else?
So let's assume here, I'll make this easier. So let's assume that, let's say that we are going to use this model for Uber's finance revenue team, right? and they're gonna use this model to build forecasts. So that's who the user is. So now how would you guys, what's the next step?
So what the model is predicting, so we'll just ask like, is it giving us the total number of sales per day, or okay, it's given the question, sorry.
No, it's good. So here, what's the model predicting, right? So it could be, yeah, it could be sales per day.
Sales per day or number of customers per day.
Exactly, that's perfect. Number of customers per day, perfect.
Or the
So then,
age group,
yeah.
like which age group, like range, from which region they're ordering, like demographic region, like which hotels they're targeting more.
Excellent. Good. Okay. So also, this is like more of an interview tip, especially in these like behavioral questions. Because this is a conversation, it's like, as an interviewer, I'm never gonna like interrupt you and say like yes or no. Like either it's more of like, basically it's like you always want to say like, I assume. So like, I assume that I'm building this model for an internal team. And I assume that what the model is predicting is your number of customers per day. And then you'd be like, is that correct? Right? And they'd be like, yeah, you can move on. And so then perfectly, as you said, right, there are a bunch of features that you would look at, which is like the time of day, the geography, the maximum age group, you know, what they've previously ordered, if there were previously any promotions. You would want to check for, you know, you would want to analyze trends and check for the integrity of data. So that's perfect, right? You guys are like knocking it out of the park. And then you go into the model, right? So here, exactly as you said, right? Let's say you would want to use a linear regression because you're predicting a continuous value. But so then what's next, right? So you've said a linear regression. So what's the next step?
So we will just get the data, we will train it, validate it, and test it.
So how do you validate it?
So thing is that like if we have suppose 100 data set, we will just split into 60 and 40%.
Okay.
And then we will try to test those model on the current model and test the accuracy of the model.
Excellent. Great.
And then we have the testing data, that is the incoming new data, and we'll try it out like whether the model is running accurately or not.
Mm-hmm.
Test for the accuracy, yeah.
Great. So the model is working correctly. So what's even a better, so if you're doing a linear regression, what is the better metric to check the, to check the performance?
It's R value.
R squared, yeah.
R
So
squared, yeah.
you can, for regression, you can evaluate that it's properly fitting the model or the data. You can use R squared, or you can use, what's another one that's really good?
RMSE.
MS.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. So now you've been able to, you've used RMSE to check it. Is there anything else that you would want to do after this? And then in this case, right, let's say they already have an existing model. What's an additional step that would ensure that this model that you've created is better than the previous one?
A/B testing, we have to perform some evaluation tests.
Excellent. So if there's a previous model, you would A/B test to ensure new model is more performant.
And do we also need to give an example to support why we think our whatever model we are suggesting is better based on some previous project experience or something?
No, you don't need to give any examples on your previous experience. What you can do though is you can give examples of what you're currently suggesting that would make it better, right? So what you could say is, well, I'm assuming, I would give, let's say I would enrich my training data set. So I would assume that maybe like your current model only has 10 features and I would use maybe like 50, and then I would do some dimensionality reduction. And usually that immediately would increase the performance of the model. Or you could say, we're not 100% sure, but with the A/B test, that's really going to be our opportunity to be able to play around with a lot of these parameters. Like that's 100% like the very much like the truth of what a data scientist and like what I do in my day to day. So like that's super fair game.
Okay.
I do have a question. When you want to just compare the result of two models, you go about doing A/B tests, or you're going to do compare them, using a t-test, again.
So, so when you're doing an A/B test, you could use within an A/B. So really like an A/B test, all it's doing is just comparing two options. But then the way that you are able to say that one option is better than another is by doing a t-test, by comparing your means of your metric. So they're not necessarily contradictory. If anything, like you would use a t-test to be comparing the means. Awesome. So this was actually, how do you, like, is this what you guys expected? Like, how do you feel? Like, would you feel like now comfortable answering these types of questions during the interview?